Hello and welcome to IAMC Radio and Podcast.
Glad to be here.
We've got a stack of sources here for today, May 31st, looking at some major news headlines from, well, all over the place, really.
Yes, quite a mix, from events here at home to international developments.
Our plan is to explore this material together, pull out the key insights for you.
Sounds good. Let's get started. Where should we begin?
Let's start with some very difficult news coming out of Nigeria, a truly tragic event.
Ah, yes. The accident involving the Kano State sports contingent.
That's the one. Our sources confirm just a devastating accident. 19 members died returning from the National Sports Festival.
19 people. It's terrible. The details say it happened Saturday, May 31st, around 9 a.m.
Yeah, in the Kura local government area, Kano State. The bus, it was one of 8 traveling together.
Right, carrying athletes, officials, about 35 people on that particular bus, I believe.
And the source said it fell off a bridge. Just awful.
Horrifying. And besides the deaths, several others were injured, needed hospital treatment quickly.
The victims, they were a mix. Athletes, journalists covering the event, medical staff, administrators.
It makes it even more poignant, doesn't it? They were coming back from the Gateway Games in Ogun State.
An event meant to promote peace and connection across cultures.
Exactly. A very somber end to that effort.
Definitely puts a shadow over things. Okay, moving from that loss to another significant development within Nigeria, this time concerning the police force.
Right. A big directive has come down. Nationwide training ordered, effective immediately.
For all personnel. And what's the driving reason behind this?
Well, the sources are pretty clear. It's directly aimed at tackling the rise in deaths and allegations of torture of suspects in police custody.
So it's a response to public concern, growing outrage.
Very much so. The training is meant to focus specifically on, suspects' constitutional rights.
And how officers should handle complaints professionally.
Precisely. The order tasks all AIGs and CPs across the country to personally lecture their officers.
Does the source give context? Specific incidents?
It does. It explicitly mentions recent events in places like Ranokano, Kwara, and Enugu.
Right.
And it highlights the very recent killing of DPO Baba Ali in Rano.
Killed by a mob, wasn't he? After a suspect allegedly died under torture.
That's what the source indicates. And it adds that this DPO had faced similar accusations before.
Right. That suggests, well, maybe a pattern the force really needs to address systemically now.
Seems like it. There's also a point about bail in the new directive.
Oh, what is that?
Suspects arrested for minor offenses are supposed to be released on bail without really strict conditions. That's often been a source of complaints,
Makes sense. And are there teeth to this? Consequences for not following the order?
Yes, very clear. Any reported death in custody due to detention or handling will be taken extremely seriously, leading to sanctions.
And failure to comply with the training itself.
That also carries severe disciplinary measures. It looks like a serious attempt to respond to these critical human rights concerns.
A necessary step, it sounds like. Okay, let's shift focus a bit from internal matters to Nigeria's interaction with international organizations.
Yes, this involves the government, President Tinubu's administration, and an NGO called INSO.
INSO, International NGO Safety Organization. What's the news?
The government has ordered them to close down their operations in Nigeria and leave immediately.
Wow. Okay. What exactly does NSO do? The name suggests safety.
That's right. They support humanitarian aid workers. They provide safety coordination, things like incident tracking, reports, data analysis, crisis support, training.
All for NGOs working in insecure areas. And it's free for registered NGOs.
Correct. They've been active in Nigeria since 2016, helping over 110 different humanitarian groups.
So, quite established. And the source suggests their work helps ensure aid gets delivered safely.
That's the implication. Globally, they support over 1,000 NGOs in about 16 different insecure countries. So they're a major player in that field.
How did INSO respond to being told to leave?
Well, their country director confirmed they got the request. They've suspended services immediately, as instructed.
Okay.
But they also stress their commitment to humanitarian principles, neutrality, impartiality, independence, and their transparency.
Are they hoping to talk to the government? Find a way forward?
Yes, they expressed hope for dialogue, pointing out that their work benefits the NGOs and ultimately the civilians they serve.
This must raise concerns for other aid groups working there, right? About the operating environment.
Absolutely. It creates significant uncertainty.
Okay, let's look outside Nigeria now. There's a significant court case underway in Finland.
Ah, yes, the trial of Simon Ekpa. It's begun. Terrorism charges.
Terrorism. What are the specific allegations?
Public incitement to commit a crime with terrorist intent, and also participation in a terrorist group.
And this relates to the Biafra independence movement in Nigeria.
Exactly. Prosecutors allege he's been actively involved conducting separatist activities online from his base in Finland.
And they argue this online activity constitutes terrorism under Finnish law.
That's their case. They're asking for a 6-year prison sentence. They claim to have a lot of evidence, mainly online communications.
But difficulty linking it directly to acts in Africa.
The source notes they acknowledge that challenge, getting concrete details on things happening on the ground.
And Ekpa's defense, what's his position?
He denies the terrorism charges, specifically denies ordering weapons.
And his lawyer?
His lawyer has apparently raised questions about how reliable the information coming from Nigeria is.
I see. There were other charges too, right? Tax fraud.
Yes, aggravated tax fraud allegations are also mentioned separately.
The background here is interesting. He was arrested back in November 2024.
That's right. Finnish police investigated, working with the Nigerian government. They said at the time he'd contributed to violence against civilians in southeast Nigeria.
He heads a faction of IPOB called Autopilot.
Yes, though it's worth noting, the source says the main IPOB faction, the one loyal to Nnamdi Kanu, actually disowned Ekpa after his arrest. Said he was never even a member.
Complicated internal dynamics there too. This trial really touches on a lot. Online activity, international borders, terrorism law.
Definitely one to watch. It sets potential precedents.
Okay, let's return to Nigeria. A terrible flood disaster in Niger State.
Yes, in Mokwa local government area, reports say over 150 people killed, more than 3,000 homes gone. Happened May 29th.
Just devastating numbers. And there's something unusual about the cause, according to locals.
That's right. The source highlights that this massive flood apparently happened without heavy rainfall preceding it.
So what do people there suspect?
There's widespread suspicion it was caused by a release of water from the Kainji Dam.
The source had quotes from victims, didn't it?
Powerful ones. People saying things like, "This is not rain, we can link this to the Kainji Dam," describing the water's speed and volume as completely unnatural.
Like nothing they'd seen from just rain or erosion.
Exactly. One person mentioned waking for prayers, and just minutes later, the water was overwhelming them. No time to save anything.
Losing everything. Homes, possessions, farm produce, money. Unimaginable.
It truly is. The source reminds us Kainji Dam is huge, vital for power and irrigation.
So the local suspicion points directly at the management of this critical infrastructure potentially causing the disaster.
It raises very serious questions about oversight, warnings, and disaster preparedness around major dams.
Indeed. Okay, shifting globally now. China's involved in establishing a new international body.
Yes, the International Organization for Mediation, or IOMED. Dozens of countries have joined China in setting this up. Signed the convention in Hong Kong.
And China's framing this as offering Chinese wisdom for conflict resolution, moving beyond a zero-sum mindset.
That's the language reported from Foreign Minister Wang Yi. The stated goal is promoting peaceful dispute resolution, building harmony.
Headquartered in Hong Kong.
Yes. Beijing is apparently promoting it as the first intergovernmental legal body focused specifically on mediation, upholding UN principles, and also boosting Hong Kong as a legal hub.
How does this fit with existing institutions like the ICJ or the Permanent Court of Arbitration? What do experts think?
Experts see it as complementary. The ICJ does adjudication, the PCA handles arbitration. This adds structured mediation at the global level.
So potentially working alongside those other bodies?
Could be. They see potential synergy. IOMED is designed to handle state-to-state issues, state-national disputes, and even big international commercial disagreements. Reflects a growing interest in mediation generally.
And the source mentioned a geopolitical angle.
It did. It suggested that support from developing nations signals Beijing's growing influence, especially in the global south.
And potentially linked to, or maybe taking advantage of, trade tensions with the U.S. under President Trump.
That was a connection the source made, yeah. It suggests these things don't happen in a vacuum.
Interesting. Speaking of the U.S., there's news about an employee at the Defense Intelligence Agency.
Yes, an IT specialist, Nathan Vilas-Losh, 28 years old, he's been charged.
Charged with what exactly?
Attempting to transmit classified national defense information to someone he thought was a representative of a foreign government.
He thought was. So it was a sting operation.
Looks like it. He was arrested where he planned to drop off records. The person he was meeting was actually an undercover FBI agent. The investigation started back in March after a tip-off.
What was his alleged reason for doing this?
The source quotes him writing that he didn't agree with or align with the values of this administration.
Meaning the U.S. administration.
Presumably.
Yeah.
And that he was willing to pass on sensitive intelligence documents he had access to.
Did he actually attempt the transfer?
Yes. He allegedly wrote down classified info on a notepad, planned drop-offs. At one point, he left a thumb drive with documents marked secret and top secret.
And what did he want in return?
Citizenship from that foreign country. He reportedly said he didn't see things improving in the U.S. long-term and wanted out.
Which foreign country was it?
The source doesn't say, interestingly, just describes it as a friendly or allied nation.
A serious breach regardless. Highlights the insider threat issue.
Definitely, even within sensitive agencies.
Okay, let's turn to diplomacy. A meeting between German Chancellor Merz and U.S. President Trump.
Yes, happened Thursday at the White House.
This is significant because Merz is new in the job, right? Took office early May.
That's right. His first official visit as chancellor, first meeting with President Trump in that role.
What was on the agenda?
The source lists the expected big topics: U.S.-German ties, the war in Ukraine, the situation in the Middle East, Gaza specifically, and trade policy.
Trade policy. That's a key point of potential friction, isn't it? Given Trump's previous actions and rhetoric.
Absolutely. The source notes Trump's potential return has caused some jitters in Europe about security and trade, like tariffs coming back.
And Germany, under Merz, is strongly supporting Ukraine.
Yes, they're helping Ukraine develop long-range missiles. They clearly want continued U.S. support for Kyiv.
And on trade, did Merz give any indication of the EU position?
He apparently warned that if transatlantic trade fights escalate, the EU might retaliate, maybe against U.S. tech firms or with other tariffs.
Setting down a marker there. What about the Middle East part of the talks?
Well, Merz has reportedly been trying to increase pressure on Israel over its actions in Gaza. It's a balancing act, supporting Israel's security, but also criticizing policy.
This source had a quote from them.
Yes, questioning what the Israeli army is now doing in the Gaza Strip and warning Israel not to do things that friends are no longer willing to accept.
So, quite direct language there. These meetings are key for gauging the tone of transatlantic relations.
Crucial, especially with so many contentious issues on the table.
And sticking with President Trump and trade,
Yeah.
there's a major announcement about tariffs.
Yes, a big one. He announced he's doubling worldwide tariffs on steel and aluminum up to 50%.
Doubling. Wow. What reason did he give?
He accused China of violating a bilateral deal.
A deal about rolling back tariffs on critical minerals.
That's what he claimed China broke. He also mentioned some fast deal in mid-May where the U.S. supposedly held off on even higher tariffs for 90 days to help China avoid a bad economic situation.
So the new rates are 50% for steel, effective next week, and 50% for aluminum, effective Wednesday. That's a sharp increase from the previous 25%.
It is. And a U.S. official quoted in the source added some background, said China seemed to be slow-walking promises on export licenses for rare earths.
Rare earths.
Oh.
Those are vital for high-tech manufacturing, right? Semiconductors, defense.
Absolutely critical. The official called China's alleged foot-dragging completely unacceptable.
How did China respond?
A Chinese embassy spokesperson said China's kept communication lines open but has its own concerns about U.S. export controls. They urged the U.S. to basically back off, stop the restrictions, and stick to whatever consensus was reached.
This isn't just tariffs, then. The U.S. took other actions, too.
Yes, the source mentions the U.S. ordered companies to stop shipping a range of goods to China without a license and even revoke some existing licenses.
Affecting things like semiconductor chemicals, machine tools, aviation parts.
That kind of thing. And the real-world impact is already being felt, apparently. A shortage of rare earths magnets is worrying automakers globally. Could even lead to factory shutdowns.
So this is a serious escalation with potentially wide-ranging economic effects.
Definitely raises the temperature on U.S.-China trade relations significantly.
Okay, finally, let's look at a strategic move by the European Union, focusing on the Black Sea.
Right, the EU has rolled out its first ever dedicated Black Sea strategy.
Why now? What's the context?
Well, the source explains that after the Soviet Union collapsed, Russia really consolidated its dominance there. The 2014 Crimea annexation let them fully control the area and build up significant military power A2AD capabilities.
Anti-accessoria denial. Makes it hard for others to operate there.
Exactly. And when the full-scale invasion of Ukraine started in Feb 2022, Russia initially took places like Snake Island, tightening their grip.
But that's changed recently.
Significantly, Ukraine's use of drones and missiles has been remarkably effective. They've pushed the Russian fleet back, breaking that chokehold on shipping, at least for now.
So the EU strategy is stepping into this changed environment, aiming to counter any Russian comeback.
That seems to be the core goal, projecting EU geopolitical power into the region.
How are they planning to do it? What's the approach?
It's described as having three main parts. First, keep loosening any Russian chokehold, protect trade, protect infrastructure. Second, boost preparations for potential conflict or instability.
Okay, specifics. How do they achieve that?
One major element is investing heavily in regional infrastructure, ports, railways, airports.
Why? Just for trade?
Partly, but also explicitly to allow faster delivery of military hardware into the region. The idea is this strengthens deterrence and supports NATO. Crumbling infrastructure is seen as a weakness for moving troops.
And they'll watch who owns this infrastructure. Concerns about China.
Yes, the source mentions monitoring investments to prevent questionable foreign ownership, citing China buying ports in Georgia as an example.
What else? Is there a monitoring component?
Yes, a big one. They plan to open a monitoring command center at the Black Sea Maritime Security Hub.
What will that hub do?
Provide detailed situational awareness, from space to seabed, they say. Real-time info on Russian ships, early warning for potential sabotage of things like undersea cables or oil rigs.
Especially important given Russia's past actions on grain exports.
Exactly. Though Ukraine has managed to open its own protected corridor now, this hub could also track Russia's shadow fleet or monitor ceasefires.
And the third part of the strategy?
Boosting partnerships across the region. The Black Sea is seen as a vital link, a trade artery connecting the EU to the South Caucasus and Central Asia. They want to develop new energy, transport, digital corridors.
Sounds ambitious. Does the source identify any major hurdles?
The key challenge mentioned is Turkey.
Turkey, a NATO ally and EU candidate, but also maintains ties with Russia.
Precisely. Turkey has its own interests, including trade with Russia. And crucially, Turkey controls access to the Black Sea through the Bosphorus via the Montreux Convention.
Which allows them to close the sea to foreign warships in wartime.
Correct. So the EU strategy is basically an invitation for Turkey to cooperate. But the source suggests Turkey will likely push back against any big EU power play that seems aimed solely at challenging Russia.
They'll probably try to maintain their own balancing act.
That's the expectation. It highlights the complex diplomatic maneuvering involved.
It really shows the EU becoming more focused on security in its neighborhood, reacting directly to Russia's actions.
A clear shift towards more geopolitical thinking from Brussels.
So we've covered quite a spectrum today. Tragic accidents, human rights issues within police forces, humanitarian operations facing shutdown, complex terrorism trial, a devastating flood linked to infrastructure, new international bodies being formed, alleged espionage, high-level diplomacy, escalating trade wars, and major geopolitical strategy shifts.
It's a lot, but you see the connections, don't you? Even though the headlines seem diverse, they touch on these core issues of governance, safety, sovereignty, power dynamics.
Yeah, the rules of engagement, both within countries and between them, how we manage conflict, trade, security.
And you can see how something like a police training order in Nigeria, or a flood potentially caused by a dam release, or new tariffs, or this Black Sea strategy, they all connect back to fundamental questions about how we organize ourselves and manage risks in a complex world.
It definitely gives you a lot to think about how these disparate events paint a bigger picture of the challenges and changes happening right now.
A constantly shifting landscape.
Thank you for listening to today's top news headlines on IAMC Radio and Podcast.